open up the communication. Today we're going to talk about Zillow. I've actually got some surprise things for Jesse because I like to get his real reaction. So for the listeners, you won't see it, but you'll be able to hear the reaction. You guys on YouTube will see it. And then there's some crazy things that Zillow's doing, and then some big additions to the MLS that you were talking about. But I want to just bring up you before I hit record. You're like, dude, I am getting so fucking tired of all these lawsuits going on in real estate. Embellish on it. What's driving you nuts? What's grinding your gears?
It's just like it's just like earnest money disputes left and right, like litigations, everybody wanting to sue each other. And it's like, man, if everyone just performed the way that the contract says, it would be perfectly fine. But I mean, I know like when the market gets slow, people get really, shaky. And I just feel like
Wait, is this a
the
market
biggest,
getting slow thing or because of the NAR settlement thing?
no, the market getting slow. It's
Oh,
just it's just buyers and sellers alike, dude. They're all like out there just to get each other and they all want to like attack each other and take each other's money. And it's just wild.
so you feel more or less this is an issue between the buyers and the sellers, not necessarily the agents?
Oh,
Like they're
100.
so misinformed that now they're creating division.
I don't even know if it's misinformed. I think it's just people during their transaction period, I think they start second guessing themselves. And, like we actually had a deal yesterday. Well, it's been under contract for a few weeks now, but like the buyer told us that they wanted to have the sewer line repaired, but they said we're also going to do some additional things on top of that. And then the sewer companies, we got like eight bids actually because it was like so expensive. The buyers ended up saying that they wanted to have a backflow system put in the house. And then one of the companies came out and said, the backflow system is completely irrelevant for this house. Like, I don't know why the buyers would even ask for that. So the plumber or the sewer line guy actually called the buyers himself and said, "Hey, I'm just trying to understand why you guys would want to put a backflow system in the house." And the buyer said, "Well, the inspector told us that the city of Portland has a known problem with water backflowing into the houses off the sewer lines." And the guy's like, he's like, I've never even heard of this happening, and I've been doing sewer lines in here forever. He's like, is it a possibility? Yes, but he's like, have I ever seen it? No. And so this inspector was being an alarmist, and that's like something else that really kind of gets me going. Is like, inspectors will say all the time, like, we have to bring this to your attention. It's kind of like clean outs and sewer lines have like before 1985 they weren't required to be in the houses. So I just sold one of my own houses. It was built in 79. And then they put in the inspection report that the sewer line was missing a clean out. But I'm like, I had to tell the buyer that the house was built to code during 79. Like you don't update the codes as the codes change,
Right.
and that's what happens. Like, they'll say like there's no GFCI out here. Well, the house is built in 1930, and it really just puts people on high alert. And that's why like your inspector, like I appreciate a great inspector, but also being able to relay that information is very important. And there's a lot of bozos out there.
Are you because we deal obviously lots and lots of transactions and buyers, but you've been pretty listing heavy too. So now you got to kind of wear the shoes of the sellers
Yeah.
and the buyers.
Well,
Is there a side that, especially with the NAR settlement and then a slower market, that's like being a bigger pain in the ass or feeling the burn a little more?
I mean, honestly, the biggest thing that I'm like the most interesting piece of this whole thing right now is literally all the people that bought during COVID with low rates, waived all the contingencies, like didn't ask for anything during the inspections, and now they're trying to sell their house. And one, they're like maybe breaking even, but two, they're like going to sell it. Now there's all these massive problems, or major repairs that they never did, and they're like angry, saying like, "Why didn't you do this during our inspection?" And it's like, well, the market was really different. If you look back at your inspection, you waived every contingency and you said you were going to fix it, yourself, and then you didn't.
Yeah.
But regarding the NARPALS thing, the one thing that's really shocked me more than anything actually is the sellers being angry, saying like, I can't believe this is happening. Like basically, I think they feel like the buyers now are being put in control of what they're possibly going to have to pay. And obviously everything's negotiable, but like I always tell, like I advise a seller is like, if you get a deal across the table and the buyer's agent's asking for 10,000, 10,000 in commissions, let's say, and it's normally like 5,000, what is the seller going to say? No, and walk away? Like, no, they're going to try to work with that offer. So I think, I don't know, man, the MLS just announced that they're going to put concession fields in the MLS, which, basically, like I've said since the beginning, is like, we're just changing the color of money here. And it's exactly what's happening right in front of our own eyes. So I saw that a few MLSs have been announcing this. This is even on our side what the MLS said that they're working towards, because there are independently owned MLSs, and like the Washington State MLS, NWMLS said that they were going to still keep the buyer's commissions displayed in the MLS because it's not owned by NAR, which is stupid because that's what NAR was sued over. So now what the MLSs and NAR are doing is they're just adding concession fields to the listing doc or to the listings, which I think is, oh yeah, you got it right there. It's exactly the
Okay.
way, in my
Yeah.
opinion, I think displaying it, because right now you have to like add it in the description, buyer paying 10,000 in closing costs, and everyone's like, whatever, no one cares. That's a gimmick. This being an actual field now, I actually really like it.
Okay. So you do like the, okay. So this says, here's an article for you guys who are listening. And actually, I just went to Google and I just typed in like MLS concession, and there's tons of news stories about this. But this headline reads California Regional MLS, so the CRMLS or whatever, um, in parentheses, they provide new concessions, concessions in price fields for greater agent and broker. So it says the California Regional MLS, which is the nation's largest and most recognized. So is this kind of a trendsetter too? They do stuff and people follow, but
No,
I'll let you,
I don't know if this MLS is owned by NAR or not. I'd have to like do a little bit more. But
it's the
no, the
biggest
MLS
one.
is the MLS NAR has announced that they're doing this in their MLSs.
Okay. So they're launching a new set of MLS system fields. So that's what you're talking about. New fields referring to concessions in price, which they're calling CIP for more than or for it's more
That's
than 100,000 users
dude,
beginning
that's
May
going to be so
29th. So
confusing
that already
because
happened.
sorry to cut you off, but SIP in my opinion is cure in place pipe for like broken sewer lines. So that's going to be interesting.
Oh, great. So here's what this says. Okay. The fields promise to encourage greater communication between listing agents, buyer's agents, and home buyers by providing upfront information regarding concessions. So do you think this comes as like a what do you call it? So basically you're being proactive or reactive. Like, is this a reactive, like, oh shit, you know, type of
No,
thing? Or do they
no.
truly feel like this is going to be the best way to do it?
I think they probably looked at a million different options, and I think they're probably like, this is the best way. And quite honestly, like I said before, as I love this, I honestly think, dude, I don't know why I've ever had this feeling, but I always thought like once they started displaying the agents or the buyer's agents commissions on the MLS, I was like, this is just going to turn into a disaster. Like something bad is about to happen. I didn't know what it was, but I did not like clear cooperation at all. I really felt like that NAR was setting us up for some sort of failure. And I get like why they were doing it. And I know you said before is like, oh yeah, this is going to create massive amounts of steering. But I'm like, it already like they're already displaying the commission. And like I always say is like a buyer calls me and tells me they want to go see a house. I never have once looked at the commission and said, oh yeah, they're paying 4%, 3%. Oh no, we're not going to see this house because it's only 1%. I've never done that in my life. I've never even cared about the commission because I just always assume that if a buyer's agent's paying 1%, the seller probably, did Polaroid pictures, and my buyers have never even like wanted to see those houses because they probably look like crap also.
But now do you find yourself looking at that, even though you never did in the past, just because of the news?
I think it's going to be kind of like fun. It's going to be like a little, like, I think it's going to feel like a little bit of a lottery. It's going to be like that addiction when you're at the slot machine. You're like, let's go, let's go.
It is fun. It's interesting to think about that because now it will be the first thing that you go look at is what commissions being paid, and especially for like I would those agents that are newer or those like doing 3 to 9 transactions a year or whatever it is, 2 to 5. That means a ton to them. Where we were on a call a little bit ago with a pretty good producing agent, and you were like, I don't give a shit, dude. I got so many clients. I need them getting into the house. So that's
This is what I
where,
think is going to happen. Buyers are going to have their agreement with their agent, and they're going to be like, all right, I'm paying my buyer's agent 15K. I think they're the ones that are going to go look at that and be like, oh, that person's only paying 10K. I'm not going to see that house.
yep.
And like I've said before, I think 90% of the sellers are still going to pay the commissions at the end of the day. But I mean, it's like, dude, it's all you're literally doing is convert. And this is like when I worked in corporate America, like They always said, don't use percentages, use dollar figures because it looks more impactful.
Mm,
So, like in my opinion, I think they're just doing something to create more impact.
okay. Well, let me ask you some follow
Because
up on that. Yeah.
and hold that thought for a second, because like when you go on a listing appointment, the seller's like, oh, I need you to do this for 1%. And I'm like, how much is 1%, dude? You're talking about $4,000. And I'm only getting, I'm only getting paid two of those. So you're literally taking away 50% of my money.
Yeah. Well,
So,
in 23, it said that nearly 40% of the California real estate MLS, their closed listings included sessions, including monetary payments that a seller agrees to contribute to the buyer's expenses and other costs. So
yeah.
almost
Nationwide, it was like
almost half of
55.
them did it.
Yeah, well, dude, it's just like, okay, I would love to see that number what it was in 2021. When the market's
Exactly, right?
slow, everyone's offering concessions.
Yep.
I mean, dude, when I was heavily in the trenches between like 17 and 20, the market was slow in my opinion, even though it was a seller's market. Every offer I wrote, it was always a below list price offer, and it was always the seller paying the max buyer closing cost, every
Hmm.
single one.
Hmm.
So it was just like a normal thing. So now with the market being slow, saying that they're getting 40%, in my opinion, is like everything is perfectly aligned for that statement. Let's go back and look in 2021. I guarantee you it was probably like zero, probably 1% or less was paying concessions.
Right. So that's where some of the news can, they can dictate the conversation because it's what's happening today, and then they won't look at the past few years and the data points, like, hey, in 2019, we actually saw zero. Last year, we saw 40%. So they're not equivocating it to that. Like, this is what the market dictates. So now, fast forward, let's go like, and I'm totally just making it up, but like 2025, June hits and like interest rates dip or something, and the market goes fucking nuts. Now, are you going to put those concessions in there? Or are you going to take them out? Like,
Well,
what
you're probably
happened?
going to take them out, but I mean, as a seller, okay, I think about it like this. As a seller, when the market was red hot, a seller that put his house on Zillow for sale by owner and
Yep.
got the Zestimate price and got one offer thought he hit a home run.
Hmm.
The seller that put his house on the MLS and got 50 offers and sold for 200,000 over list and paid an agent say 60K in commissions, netted an incremental 140.
Hmm.
They both feel like they hit home runs. So it's always in the mind of the beholder. In my opinion, I think that's going to happen again at some point in time. And, if I'm in a battle to get that buyer into that house with multiple offers, our conversation is always going to be like, hey, can we write the offer over X over? Like once they agree, like, hey, we have this buyer's agent compensation. We're going to need to write it over even higher to get the compensation paid for if the buyer's agent's going. But the reality is like when the market's red hot too, this is the one thing I really noticed when the market was red hot is everyone coming to the table for the most part had a lot of money in the bank. Like the true players were out to play. Like right now, we're seeing a lot of first time home buyers out playing because I think the market's less competitive. They feel like they can get deals. It's just a very interesting conversation because even the call we just got off of, what the guy say? He's like, all the leads I'm getting are first time home buyers. I'm
Right.
even hearing this a lot with the YouTube agents. They're all like, man, there's a lot of first time home buyers coming in.
Yeah. And then now they're sitting there, as he mentioned too, the guy we talked to, the people sitting on the 2 to 3% interest rates are sitting.
Or the lock, yeah,
So,
it's called the rate lock.
yep.
Um,
It's
the rate lock generation.
so, it's funny is I just literally was typing while you were talking because I just wanted to find like a most relevant news story. And look at what comes up, dude, from Redfin. Home prices are falling in three Texas metros and Portland, Oregon. So it hits. Prices are down 3% in Austin. It says home sale prices declining year over year in four major metros: Austin, San Antonio, Fort Worth, and Portland, Oregon, where it rose 4.4%. So if nobody's selling and we're in this rate lock, how are like how has this number come up? How have prices drop? Is it because people are in that COVID mindset of like, oh, I'll just list at high price, get multiple offers, and it's like sellers who are unrealistic and they're doing price drops?
Yes.
Okay.
It's exactly what it is. And it's so funny, dude. Cause like when I think of 0.9%, okay, on a $400,000 house, that's $4,000 off, or 3,500, or sorry, $3,900 off.
Yeah.
Like it's such a small number. And uh yeah, I mean it's so funny because like when I think about that, because I'm like, I'm just pulling up the Portland stats right now and looking at the average price sales. So month over month, sales prices are actually up. And then in May, 2024 versus 2023, the average sales price is actually up 1.6%. So like whatever data they're looking at must have been from like April.
Well, why? And I think there's other real estate podcasts, and people bring this up from the real estate mindset, and they just want to shit on it. Oh, it's not what's fucking. And here's what's real. What like I want to dig into this.
Oh
Why would
no, dude,
who wins on this? Why would Redfin post this? And like, what do you get out of that? I don't get it.
it's dude, okay, this market right now, and like I'm like sitting here just like I am very
I know
analytical.
this
So
is why we're
so
talking.
it's like blowing my brain up right now of thinking about this because it's literally like I go to the all of these events and parties and I talk to all these people and they all have this mindset of the market is in a steep decline and that we're heading into a crash. And I'm sitting here in the freaking blender going like, man, it's so hard to explain to someone that inventory is really low, the buyer pool is really low, interest rates are higher. So it's like everyone feels like all these houses are on the market forever, but they're like prices aren't coming down. Like why? And it's because supply and demand always dictates the price. So if you have very low inventory, very low buyers, the market, it's like whether you have one house on the market and then you only sell one a month versus 100,000 houses on the market and you sell 100,000 a month, the inventory level is the same with those two scenarios. So people cannot understand. 99% of people do not understand that concept at all. So it's like you could have two truths to something. So it's like I always tell everyone is like, yes, the market is slowing down, but yes, the housing prices are also like stabilizing and going up a little bit. They're like, how can that be? How can that be? I'm like, because there's two truths to this market.
Right.
And if rates drop today, dude, you would see the biggest vacuum in the history of real estate faster than COVID, dude. Like you would have about 30 days to have like the best buying period of your life and it
Hmm.
would just be a bloodbath.
And then you would hope that you had a bunch of fucking property sitting there that you could sell. But okay, so then again, that's why I love this podcast because this is our phone conversations, and I ask you these dumb questions. So I'm going, if I'm like the who does the rate, like the Fed or whatever, or who's adjusting the rates, then if I'm head of that position, you probably know the guy's fucking name. I'm terrified. What like I almost get his point of like I can't drop these rates. It's gonna be a fucking bloodbath out there. Like what do you do in a market like this? Because I do see it. And I talk to like normal people. They're all waiting for these
Oh yeah.
interest rates to drop. And so it's going to explode. And then now affordability is like gone,
Mm-hmm.
gone.
Yeah.
So
The
what
head
do
of the
they do?
Fed,
I
well,
don't
the head
get
of
it.
the Fed is Jerome Powell, white
I think
Jerome
I played
Powell.
basketball with him. Oh, fucking no. It's a
Um,
tough position.
uh, okay, so what you just said, dude, is exactly the problem and why the Fed isn't dropping the rates. If they drop the rates, they know it's game over, and everyone's like in this rate lock position of like where they're not moving off their current rates. So they would just be like throwing out a free. Who would you be like pandering to in that situation? You're
Hmm.
just all you're doing is satisfying the need of someone that's out shopping right now. You're not going to get everyone else moving off of their 2 and 3% mortgages. So you would literally just be like incentivizing people that don't need to be incentivized right now. It'd be like, oh yeah, here's a freebie. They're in control of the whole situation and they know it. And the crazy thing is Rachel, my wife's father or stepdad, he's the director of the like forestry for the state of Idaho, and he controls all the timber sales. And he's like, dude, our timber sales are in the tank so bad, like they can't even give away the timber right now. And he's like, all of these home builders and all of these mills, like they're not buying lumber right now. And I'm like, why is that? And he's like, the housing starts are down significantly. He's like, the only thing that's doing okay is like multifam. And I was like, why do you think that is? And he's like, it's they don't want another market crash to happen. And they're so fearful that it's going to happen again. Like this is the way that they control their destiny as well. They don't overbuild. So when we always hear like, oh, we're 14 million homes behind at starter homes, Well, guess what? The builders don't care. They're going to control their inventory and they're just going to build just enough to keep selling just enough. So that way they don't end up in a bad position because they're rolling the dice in a big way. No one understands this. Everyone thinks they're going to take advantage of builders, all these things. The builders are not stupid, but they're in new construction loans until they get that certificate of occupancy. Once they go with that, they're going to interest only loans. So in my opinion, if you're a builder, because everyone I hear this all the time now, I hear everyone's like, all these builders have all this shadow inventory and the market's going to crash when they release it all. I'm like, do you think these builders are stupid? There's a reason they're not putting that toilet in that house at the finish line. They're holding that certificate of occupancy back as long as possible. And this is the way that they control it too. So if they can keep their demand up high, guess what they're always going to do? Sell, 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 sell. They're not going to have any overage in inventory.
Okay, and I just Googled this. This is May 16th of the new residential, construction. Basically, the home starts, and it is down. So this graph here kind of shows completions are up, but starts are down.
Yep.
So the green
Exactly what I just
line,
said.
yep, and the permits,
Are way down
which
too.
skyrocketed in April of 20, and no, about like
And
January,
guess
February of 22.
because they were filling demand. And remember what was happening there? What happened
No.
back then
Oh,
besides
is
COVID?
I
Remember
was gonna say,
all the new construction companies were out of materials and they couldn't get any materials for anything, and lumber prices skyrocketed, and they kept sending us addendum saying that they were increasing the sales price of the home by like 60K.
yeah.
And look how many permits they do. They were taking a massive advantage of a situation.
Well, and looking at this graph, it's crazy that the permits and the starts are variable. I mean, huge dips,
Oh,
huge spikes, but the only thing that's constant is an
here,
upward of completion.
here's what I want you, everyone. This is a golden nugget for everyone that's listening right now. Look at that April 2020 mark. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, you can't see this, but look at that April 2020 mark, how it's low.
Mm-hmm.
And then look what happens in the next year, or even 6 months. Everyone needs to know this. If there's ever a pandemic in the history of America, look how the markets react 6 months after the pandemic hits. Every single pandemic in the history of America, we go into this big giant lull, and then 6 months later, we're at like a peak. It's happened with every pandemic, with the exception of AIDS.
Hmm.
AIDS took about 12 months. Every other pandemic is about a 6 month run up. So if you ever want to take advantage of a market, that is what my one pro tip. Let the pandemic hit rock bottom. Boom, take advantage of it really quick, and then just wait 6-12 months. You'll see massive increase.
I thought you kept saying thought you were gonna say let the bodies hit the floor. Okay, yeah, dude, that's
It happens with gold, the stock market, and the housing industry.
wow, dude. That's crazy. So that is telling you, I mean, again, yeah, builders are probably like, okay, what we'll do now is instead of having this massive inventory, we're just gonna kind of chunk along, and I don't really care about what anybody says.
They don't care.
They don't care. We do a lot of the in Texas, and there's a lot of new construction home, and the builders. It's funny because we actually had, and I think I was mentioning to you, we had a builder. They were offering like a 10% commission, which is crazy. But then the sales rep for that builder tried to snake our clients and not get the commission to us. She must get a bonus on that
Oh yeah, they
with
all
that.
do.
Yeah. But now we're starting to see the high end builders. They're beating down our door,
Oh,
right?
of course.
They want to work with they want. They want us. We're the ones bringing more traffic than their own marketing department. Um, but yeah, they're not having like the massive inventory. The national builders are, but the
Well,
smaller.
the builders are they're lonely on a Friday night right now.
Hmm.
So they're trying to figure out exactly how to get those buyers in the door. So when they see people like us generating a couple 100,000 views on a one single YouTube video organically, and
Yep.
they're like hearing these other builders, and this is what I told you about before. I'm like, dude, you're gonna start seeing this buzz happen where these builders are gonna start calling us, begging us to do these communities. Well, guess what's happening? Now they're starting to call because they're like, holy crap, man,
Yep.
it's like the best kept secret.
Well, and then you think about like, okay, again, I want to play into the like the
If I was
shoot.
a builder, dude, I would be calling up you and I would be like begging, I would be
Yeah,
paying you a salary just to make videos on my community.
that's why we're gonna become a builder, bro. Now I know I got the best marketing platform. We're just going to build the damn thing. But okay, so back to like the consumers, because that's who is, the issue in a lot of this is not me and you talking or me and you talking with top agents. Like we get it, we get what's going on, but it's the perception in the news, and the way everything can be misconstrued. So it's like you see from Market Watch a big bold headline like this: new home construction posts biggest drop in 4 years, despite America facing a housing shortage. So very
Yep.
clickbaity.
That's what
And
I just
this
told
is
you.
now going to get the public like freaking out, reacting. These built, no, what's going on. I bet you if look at it, the numbers
Look,
aren't
look what
as
it's talking.
big.
What it says there. It's just housing starts fell. It's not
Fell.
talking about the prices. It's talking about the starts.
Yep.
That's what I was just saying a minute ago. I'm like, the starts are way down. They don't care. Even it just
Nope.
says right there, there's a big, massive shortage in housing, and then
Right.
they're building less. Sounds like a really good formula to me.
Yep. So again, what's the incentive of Market Watch to post this? Is it to
If
get
okay,
people riled
Jackson,
up?
I'm just gonna blow your mind with this statement, and I've been saying this for a decade. If they really wanted to fix the housing problem in America, you know what they would do? They would incentivize the builders to build more starter homes for cheap. But guess what? When you're a builder and you have one lot and it's 5,000 square feet, what are you gonna build on there? A starter home for 350 or a trade up home for 800 to a million?
Yep.
That's exactly what's happening. I cannot stand it. I think it's crap. I think they need to be incentivizing these builders to build starter homes because and I know why they don't. It's because one, they got to control the narrative, but two, there's all these baby boomers that are sitting in their houses. And I think what they feel like is going to happen is once all the baby boomer generations cycle out, there's going to be a massive influx of starter homes available. So I think in the next 20 years, we're going to see all that inventory start to hit the market of resale.
Yeah. Which,
Because if you
yeah.
pay attention to assisted living facilities and all that, they're like way down. People want their independence longer now.
Yep. Yeah. Builders scaled back constructing new single family homes, leading to a 12.4% drop, as well as apartment starts, which fell 20.8%. So that means a lot, which is crazy, I mean, but doesn't the multifamily, I mean, doesn't that fall into the multifamily
Oh yeah. Well, this is just talking about starts. So
starts?
I mean, realistically, these builders have been building. This is just starts. Remember, like it's so the this is like when you tell people too, like, hey, the inventory level staying flat because the inventory is like, but there's less homes. Like that's it's so hard to like convey this message to people because like I always say is like there can be two truths at once on this situation.
Yep.
And that's what's happening here. And this is why it's blowing people's minds and they can't figure it out. I mean, if you really want to know the best time to buy and the best time to sell is it's like I said, like you're gonna have 30 days of perfect opportunity. The Cromford report, if you follow that, I know we talk about it every week, but it'll say like this is the best time to buy. And there's an indicator in there, and then this is the best time to sell because the best time to buy is right when the market's starting to pick up and be aggressively multiple offers. The best time to sell is right at the like when the market starts to slow down with multiple offers. So there are best times to buy and best times to sell. And I know that everyone will say the best time to buy and best time to sell is when you're ready. It's like, well, if you're looking at it from that point of view, I get it. But if you're looking at it from a financial point of view and you're investing and you're trying to time the market perfectly, there are perfect scenarios. Low interest rate, in my opinion, is the best. You should buy as many houses as you can when rates are low.
Right. Which is, and then, okay, so that leads to who did that? Investors, right?
What did what?
Bought all those houses. So when interest
Oh
rates were
yeah.
2%
Oh yeah. Well,
and people didn't buy, but who was the biggest buyer during the 2 and 3%?
yeah, BlackRock and the private equity companies. Dude,
They were just
I just
licking
hear
their
these people talk
chops.
about all the time. I hear these people like I can't even stand working with investors sometimes because I just was helping someone with an investor client and the guy was telling me he goes, we're still in COVID pricing. We're still in COVID pricing. Like it's gonna crash. I'm gonna wait and this and that. And I said, dude, why didn't you buy houses during COVID pricing then? Why didn't you buy houses in 2010 after the market crashed? Like hindsight's always 2020. I wish
Hmm.
I would have. I talked to someone that said they did 300 flips during COVID. They're like, I go, what was the biggest mistake you made? They said not putting all those houses in 3% mortgages. Like I sold them all. It's like I should
Hmm.
have kept them all. It's like the opportunity is always there. It's whether or not you're in the position to capitalize on the opportunity. And someone even told me the other day, I saw their post on your Houston channel. They're like, if you bought in this market, you're an idiot. I'm in my own mind, I'm like, so you want the rates to fall and then end up those houses are going to be $100,000 higher. Like
Hmm.
you could even buy the house today and then refi at that point in time. But yes, what if the market did go down? Then you wouldn't be able to do that. You're always rolling the dice. I just think we're really probably at the bottom of this thing right now. I think we were at the bottom last year. Because I feel like things are picking up, in my own opinion.
Yeah.
I think it's
So,
more normal. We're more normalized now.
well, and then like when you really think about it, I'm like, everybody says, oh, the market's gonna tank. The market's gonna tank. And then the reaction of a realtor is like, you know, to negate that and oh, it's not gonna tank. Today's the best time. But when you really boil it back down, I think when people say that, it's typically people like who went through the '08. We were teenagers, we're millennials, and even people a little bit older who were 20, 30, 40 during that. That's their lasting impression in their mind is that housing markets, when they crash, prices just plummet. So you can be in a market crash or slow market, but it doesn't mean that prices are going to dip. So you're saying we're at the bottom of it right now, but prices are steady, and in some markets they're rising still.
Oh yeah, I mean this
So there is no.
like even Redfin I think put this article. Oh no, it was Realtor.com. The housing prices this year are up like 5.6% versus last year, total year. And so what you just mentioned is a really good point. The crash is what someone knows. That's all they know. It's like I love the analogy of somebody. I heard this one time where this guy said, if you know someone as like say that you've known them their whole life and all you just know that they've always been overweight and they love Cheetos and you're like, that's the Cheeto guy. Well, then say that person gets super in shape and he's always at the gym and then someone new meets them and they're like, oh, that's the workout guy. Well, you remember him as Cheeto guy. They know them as workout guy. It's the same exact person. So that's what we are in this real estate world now is people only know the crash that are like a younger generation. You have to remember that crash has only happened like twice that we know of. The Great Depression. Look, they're applauding me right now.
They
Balloons flying.
are.
The Great Depression, and then what is it? 70 years later, we had the market crash. So yes, your housing price is probably going to double 5 times in 70 years. So yeah, if you want to wait, go for it. But that's a once in a lifetime opportunity. Once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
2 and 3% mortgages, once in a lifetime. So that's why I said you have to go back and look at like what's happened during these pandemics. Everything is history always repeats itself. So if you go back and look at history, like exactly like what happened with COVID, you just go back and look at what happened during like swine flu, the Black Plague, AIDS. Like you could name all these different plagues and viruses and things that have happened. It's not something new. It's happened multiple times. It's just maybe the first time in our generation.
Yeah.
So everyone acts like a market crash happens every 10 years, dude. It's so freaking crazy to me.
That's what we're gonna remember now. Every time something happens, it's always gonna be COVID in our minds. That was the worst one we saw. So it'll be lockdowns, and that's what we'll always think of pandemics is that
Yep.
lockdown, the news spreading it. Huh. That's crazy, man. I just it's kind of weird to sit back and be in the middle of the, real estate market and seeing what's actually happening and then seeing what's portrayed out there. And you wonder at what gain. We know a lot of YouTubers and they gain AdSense by doing clickbait titles, but at the end of the day, too, you have to fucking believe that. Like, I couldn't imagine just talking negative all day, just actually hoping that a crash happens so that you can tell people that you were right.
Oh, dude.
And when it's not happening, and when the real issue is not housing prices, and if it's going to crash, the real issue is that people want to buy houses now, and there's not you know
Well, like
enough inventory out there.
when the market calmed down and like prices did go down, like everyone kept telling me, they're like, the prices haven't changed at all. And I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, I'm waiting for the prices to come down and they haven't changed at all. And I said, oh, yes, they have. And they're like, no, they haven't. And I said, because you're thinking they're going to happen overnight. I said, it's been on a gradual decrease for the last 12 months. I said, and when it's only a 0.5% or 1/4% a month, you're not going to feel it. That's what's happening, dude. Everyone the thing is this low rates in COVID has everyone paying attention to real estate.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're paying attention to it, you're like, you don't see it because it's happening in front of your eyes. If you were to leave and come back for a couple of years, you would really see a difference. And that's typically what happens with people that buy and sell houses. They're not paying attention for 7 years. But right now, everyone has been paying attention. So
Well, you
everyone's
always
in
say
the
that the real
game.
estate market runs the country. Like,
Oh yeah, it's the highest GDP driver of our economy.
yeah.
That's why
So,
that's another reason that we're having inflation problems. Dude, this whole thing is tied together. Dude, I mean, I hate to say this, it's just real shitty leadership.
yep. Okay. Well, we're almost done, but that leads you into coming in a few months. Do you think things will change? Like, what can't predict it, I guess, but I guess if you were to take a stab at it, like, what do you think would happen in the next, let's say, 6 months?
So, well, Jerome Powell's the head of the Fed and he ain't leaving. He's on a term. So I don't think he can be, I don't think his post is up until 2026. And he's already said, so I think what happened with him specifically is I think he got burned bad. I think what happened is I think because he was the anti um, stimmies, he didn't want to send out the stimulus packages. And I think the Biden administration convinced him to do it.
Mm,
And I think he looked like a fool because he was, yeah, dude, he's like going down as like one of the worst Fed chairs in the history of America.
mm,
Well, I think that it made him look really bad. He was against it. They convinced him to do it. I think they said that it wouldn't be a problem. And I think so ever since then, he just drew a hard line in the sand and said, I am not controlled by the presidency. I do what's best for America, all these things. And I think he got put into a really bad position with that whole situation and how they handled everything. And I think now he's just basically like, I don't care. So, if say Trump comes in and gets elected, is there things that he could do to get the economy booming again? Absolutely. I think that's why the stock market's performing well, is I think they think there's going to be a new president coming in. I was listening to this interview yesterday and it's something that was blew my mind, dude. So when you think of America, like Elon Musk talks about this all the time, he goes, America is a, is basically set up, the government is set up like a corporation that has a monopoly on war. Like it's the only company that can like legally do war. And so when I started thinking about that, I said the reason that America keeps going more and more in debt, in my opinion, it's like Johnny comes along and takes over his parents' business but has no experience in running a
mm-hmm.
business. And they start just spending money like crazy because now they have all this money. But you have to think about it, all these elected officials are all paid by taxpayers, but they're all just looking out for their own self-interest and how can they make more money on the side. It's really sad.
Yeah.
So I actually heard that Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, which is the biggest bank in the world by far, he actually came out and said that he felt that Trump before COVID was like doing great things for the American economy, which is crazy because he was like pretty not a big fan of Trump, I guess. Well, now you're starting to see him say more and more positive things. So when you're like, can they do something? I think they can, because also what I was heard on this interview, which was crazy, is that NATO specifically, there was all these countries in NATO and they're supposed to pay every month to be a part of the club. Well, Trump said that he looked at the balance sheet and there was 90% of the countries weren't paying into the fund, yet they were still being protected by America. So he told them, if you don't pay your money back, pay your money, we're going to not protect you if you get attacked. They all asked him if it was true. He said yes. The next day, he said hundreds of millions of dollars started pouring in. So what I think is happening is I think there's lots of those things out there where people are not making their payments, but there's no debt collector there knocking on their door.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think we pay attention.
Yeah. And then you also said that that debt out there that the consumers have too, is that going to play a factor into people getting loans, even
Oh,
if,
who was I just talking to the other day about this? Oh, the our financial guy, Dan. He was saying that, but when COVID hit, there was trillions of dollars in savings. And he's like, look, today they were spending like some crazy number every month, record numbers, like 1.2 billion a month. And literally in less than 2 years, the savings of America has been completely wiped out. And I'm like, that is freaking nuts, dude.
well, that's scary. And then does that affect a lot of people now trying to buy houses when they,
Okay, dude. This is what I was saying last time is that they're like, it is okay. I'm not going to say who this is. And it's happened multiple times where people have called us and they're like, hey, we bought our house during COVID 2021. We need to sell our house. So we go to look at it and we're like, it's literally worth what they paid for it. But then we like look, they're like, they put 20% down, but they've done a home equity line of credit and now they're upside
Mm.
down on their mortgage. I'm telling you, they're in a 2% mortgage and they're in a bad position. And I'm like, I've told them, look, you can't even buy a rental for cheaper than what you're paying on your mortgage. You just need to hang tight. But they can't. I'm just like, man, there are some people in bad positions and it just hasn't hit yet. And then, so what people are going to extrapolate out of this is like, we're heading for a crash with that top talk. No. If you look at the amount of foreclosures actually making it in to foreclosures, I think the other day I read it. So it was like 30,000 foreclosures were filed in the month, but only like 30 made it through.
I think it was
And it's like,
yeah.
it's so low, dude. Even if you quadrupled the number, it wouldn't even do anything.
We talked about that, I think, in the last podcast. We actually went through the numbers. It's like foreclosures are up 557,000 trillion percent. You know, some fucking crazy headline. Then you look and the real numbers, it was up like 14
Yep.
from
Yeah.
two foreclosures to 14, and now it's up 700% type stuff, you know.
Well, back when I was in corporate America, like it was so funny, dude, because like people be like, we're up 900%. It's like, cool, you went from 2 sales to 10. We went from like 200,000 sales to like 201,000 sales, and we're up like 0.006%. But the guy that's up 900% is like saying he's kicking our ass.
Yep.
It's like, this is the same thing when it comes into like volume. It always blew my mind when I worked for these companies, and they'd always be like, we're not paying bonuses because we're not up. And I'd be like, but we sold $500 billion in sales. Like you still got paid, brother.
Yep.
And we still sold a ton of product. And so what they would do is they would adjust the price a little bit. So I'd always see the net operating income would be up and the net income would be up. The gross income would be up, but the sales percentage would be down. And I'd be like, this is insane. It's like, it was just like it was a full control situation. And, you know, so when you're selling volume, I don't care what people say, when you're selling volume, you could always make money. It just the percentages might not look great. So it's like, yeah, we're down 2% in sales volume, but we're still up 8% in unit sales. So it's all about that fine balance, and it's also about money in the bank at the end of the day. That's the true measuring stick of
Mm-hmm.
your success, I guess, on that front when you're talking about corporate businesses and things like that. But I think the death by 1,000 cuts, like there's just been so much weird stuff happening and things going on that like it just it's all a distraction realistically.
Yeah. Nothing new. The world's always
Nothing
had a
new,
bunch of
dude.
weird stuff going on.
If you pay attention to the spies talk, they say that's how you take over countries is you just create chaos.
Yeah. Well, and there's been a lot of it for many, many years. It's always the
Yep.
craziest when it's most relevant, when it's happening right now, you know?
Yep. Oh yeah, when you're living in it, dude, you
When
can't
you're
see
living
it.
in it, it's the craziest.
Yep.
I always try and tell my wife or any buddy who's like hardcore in that, I'm like, could you imagine what it was like back in the days too? Like going through, atomic warfares and having to build bunkers and all. Like, there's a lot of times where it was probably when Elvis came out.
With the hip thrust, they're like, "Oh, it's the
Yeah,
devil."
the fucking world is ending. But um, well, this has been a good one. We'll wrap it up. Agents out there, you can hear the shit that I get to hear every day from J Dow now. Um, but you can also probably see why a video guy like me can go into selling hundreds and hundreds of homes. If you're interested in learning more about, partnering with us, getting his maniacal mindset behind your business to scale, you just email either one of us, message us. But we also want to take questions or concerns, or if you want to come on and debate, talk, whatever. Info@channeljunkies.com, info@jacksonwilkie.com. Send us some stuff that we can talk about. Um,
I did hear some good some debates. I mean, I thought they were the people, it's always funny just to hear like what side of the fence people are on. And it's when people try to defend things so harshly in a light that's bad is like I almost feel embarrassed for them. So I saw some like real estate debates the other day and I'm like, it's just very interesting to me.
yeah, I know we'll end it, but that's another thing that we could talk about is the debates and the side of the fence because there is no like middle line anymore. There's no riding the fence. It's either side. And what Joe Rogan's always talking about this too. It's like you almost argue these things just because like you have to. Once you
Mhm.
start your argument, you can't fucking go back. And it's like Android versus Apple. Like Android users want Apple users to quit using Apple and get to their dark side. Like no other reason. No, like, hey, this technology is better. It's just you finally win, and you'll never give up your position on it.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And that's unfortunately what you see like in the real estate market nowadays, and really anything in this world. It's just sad. It's a bunch of fucking people who don't want to lose an argument, you
Well,
know?
it's also that they say that's 70% or whatever you hear for the first time is 70% of your core belief.
Mm-hmm.
What I used to call this in the brewing industry, it's like very funny. So like I worked for multiple companies that recruited kids right out of college, or I shouldn't say kids, adults, I guess. And so if they were a brand new recruit into a company and they only ever worked for that company, they were just sipping the Kool-Aid so hard. And we called them Sam bots.
Hmm.
And so it was funny because if you went from one company to the next, all you cared about was like climbing the corporate ladder, promotions, and you just didn't care. You knew that every company was basically the same, right? Yes, was the culture better at some of them? Yes. But everything else pretty much was the same. So it was like once they were sucked into that, and I see the same thing in real estate now. It's like, when I was at KW, like everyone at KW that had never been at another brokerage, they were just like ultra sandbotting. And then and it's the same thing in the cloud models now. If you've never been to one of the other ones, you think the other one's the best and the other ones suck.
Yep.
And of course, every decision that you make is the best decision on planet Earth, because you would never make a bad decision because it's just validating you. I mean, I think everyone needs to keep an open mind and always listen to even what the other side is saying. I mean, because there are opportunities out there. And if you just think that you're in the best position, especially, it can really limit your growth and your income at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. That's a tough pill to swallow, man. Nobody's good at that. I'll admit
Dude,
that.
you have to like, oh, trust me, dude. I had to eat the biggest
Yep.
humble pie when we moved to EXP because I was like anti EXP for 2 years because our
Oh,
brokerage was
I
trashing
hated
it.
it.
Oh yeah, dude. Like we were being recruited left and right by all these people. I'd be like, hey, let's go get lunch. And then they'd show up with like this life insurance policy and a pen.
Yep.
And it'd be like, what's going on here? And that was the only taste in the mouth, right? So then now you have other people going to these other cloud models, and of course theirs is the best. And it's like, look, there's a best for everyone. But when I see these people at these I don't know, it's just real interesting to me of
That'll
like
be our
what
next
the
podcast. We're gonna do the brokerage beatdown. The brokerage, we're just gonna talk about it. I know you've literally taken
don't
an interview at
don't
every
bring anyone on
single
from
one.
Keller, dude. All they're gonna talk about is command and their profit share.
No, we're just gonna talk about open air. Open air talk.
I'm just joking, dude.
Anybody can talk, but all right, we're gonna let it wrap. You guys don't miss these. This is gonna be the new style podcast. We are being real on the nameless podcast. If you got a name for it, let us know. So, all right, homies. Until the next one, we will catch you later.
Catch you later.